Dear friends, very good evening and a warm welcome to all of you on a Thursday evening to join us on the webinar series Bengaluru Fights Corona. And we have Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa with us, who is the cluster head for pediatrics in Manipal Hospital. I would like to start by giving a brief about Namma Bengaluru Foundation, followed by the doctor's brief, and then we'll go ahead with the webinar. A brief about the foundation is we are a non-profit organization with an aim to be champions of change for a better Bengaluru. NBF strives to be the voice of the city and those who relentlessly fight towards making the city more livable, inclusive, and responsibly governed. Our mission also includes building and fostering enriching partnerships with individuals and institutions to create a sustainable and impactful improvement in the city. Given that the city has become a dream destination for the citizens from all over the country, be it in IT, engineering, business, industry, education, and healthcare, as we all know, we wish to champion the cause of every citizen in making Namma Bengaluru a world-class city for its residents. We thank you all for joining us today. Please follow us on our social media pages. We are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we'd like you to receive our updates on our campaigns that we do both online since the pandemic is going on, as well as we do a lot of campaigns on ground. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, dear friends. Today, as we all know, we have Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa. Welcome, doctor. Very good evening to you.
Good evening.
Good evening, doctor. Yeah. Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa has been associated with Manipal Hospital, as all of us know, and many of us are as clients who have gone to him with our children. As I actually announced this, many of my friends came back and told me that they have been clients of Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa for the last so many years. Welcome, doctor. And we have Dr. Chinnappa, who's been practicing in Manipal hospitals and also various other hospitals. And today, he'll be speaking on protecting children from the pandemic and how children can be protected from the third wave. We welcome you, doctor. You can give your opening remarks, and then I think we'll open the floor for questions from the audience today. And please raise your hands, and also you can actually type your questions in the chat box, and we will take it to Dr. Chinnappa as and when you raise your hands. Thank you all. Thank you all. And welcome, doctor. Welcome once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vinod, for that excellent introduction. And I was thinking that I will just run through a small presentation to get the ball rolling.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
And then we can take questions as and when required, because I'm sure everybody is pretty accustomed to COVID and its complications from the last 2 years. So let's see that what we know, what are the blind spots, and what we need to answer. So I will just run through a presentation if you allow me to share the screen.
Please, sir. Please, sir. Yeah, I've stopped sharing my screen, sir.
Yeah. So I will just give me just a minute before I get this thing going. And there we are. Okay, screen visible?
Yeah. Yes, sir. You're on. Yeah. You're on.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Yes. So if everybody is ready, we can start.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we will do in the next half an hour to 40 minutes is I'm going to give you a brief overview of what is happening to COVID. What is this third wave? What are all the other issues with COVID right now in the current scenario? And what has been our response from various stakeholders? And then we will invite the public to give their comments as to what their concerns are and what could be the partnerships that we can get into to try and help the children in our city. So I will start with this. Basically, this whole thing started, the COVID started sometime last year in March. And from then, it's been coming in waves. And somewhere around 5th of May is when there was a bombshell which was dropped saying, Professor Vijay Raghavan said there is going to be a third wave, and this third wave is going to land up with a problem. And very soon after also, there was a little bit of retraction because it created a lot of buzz. A lot of people started getting worried about third wave and things like that. Well, they said that again, soon afterwards, said that this third wave may not happen if we follow two things. One is if we follow COVID-19 appropriate behavior, and two, if we vaccinate. So these are the two things that they said that the third may be attenuated or it may not happen at all. However, if you look at the recent data, which has been released just about a couple of days back from the Indian Institute of Science, from our local Bangalore Statistical Institute, they are expecting a wave sometime in the end of this year, towards the end of this year, maybe around October, November, December, something like that. Well, you know that all this has been modeled on what is called as the Sutra model, which is a combination of a couple of institutions, IIT predominantly, which classified them into susceptible problem, the population, undetected population, tested and removed approach. Now they model it on mathematical basis, and they were blamed for not predicting the second wave. But the second wave landed on us. Nobody could predict this because of a mutant. Because there was a mutant in the virus changed its character, and therefore the problem was happened. So anyway, their prediction also says somewhere down festival area we are going to get this problem. Now, what are these waves? Basically, you know very well that the virus needs a susceptible population. So if you have a susceptible population, the virus is going to attack you. Now, the virus attacks you for some time, and then there is some resistance that comes up there. So once the resistance comes up there, people are protected, virus cannot spread very much, so it becomes less. Then again, there is accumulation of susceptible people, and there is a second wave that happens. And then we will see why they are predicting children to be affected. Just to go back, the COVID virus we know is an RNA virus. This is a simplified cartoon of this virus. It has got multiple antigens, as you can see, the spike protein, membrane protein, etc., which I'm not going to go into too many details. Just that it's got a complicated virus thing. This virus attaches to a particular receptor on the cell. And this receptor called the ACE2 receptor that you can see there right on top here. The ACE2 receptor, it binds against this receptor and then enters into the cell and then multiplies and creates the disease. Now, these ACE2 receptors are there in many parts of our body, not only the lung, upper airway, including the stomach, intestine, even brain, and many other parts. So the coronavirus can affect any of these organs, not necessarily only the lung. The beauty about this ACE2 receptors is it's very, very small representation in babies, and therefore you don't see very big disease in children because this virus is less in children. So this is the problem with this is the reason why children are not affected too badly, because their ACE2 receptors are very, very less. Then you have the next step is that it spreads primarily by coughing, by respiratory droplets. So if you can cover your nose pretty well, and if you can see that you dispose of the secretions also carefully, then you will reduce this transmission of the disease. The other thing it also is very important is to cough etiquette, or what you need to do is to cough into your inner part of your elbow so that it doesn't spread as an aerosol or as a big spray which can go and infect people. So this is the way it spreads. The other way it can spread is by fomites. This is a bit of a controversy now. We do not know how much of transmission is because of fomite, but it's very clear that if there are infected secretions on cell phones, on money, on keys, on door handles and elevator. Let me caution you, elevator is another major source because it's a closed space. People are breathing there. And if they don't wear the mask properly, a person who's infected can pass on this infection very easily in an elevator. In fact, some of the doctors who got infected in hospitals are basically because of elevator problems. So good reason to get fit. COVID has made all of us fat. So good reason to get fit is to run upstairs and downstairs. So I think that's one message which you can look at. Now, everybody wants to know when this pandemic is going to end. Is it going to end and when it is going to end? Let me assure you, this pandemic is not going to end. There is no end to this pandemic. It is going to be there with us for many, many, many more years. It might go from pandemic, it will change its name and become endemic, but it is not going to disappear. It is going to cause small infection pockets on and off. So therefore, please don't worry about this ending of this pandemic. Now we'll stick a little bit about mutations. See, mutations, what happens is virus is smart. It's having a running race with us. You see, we want to outrun the virus wants to outrun us. So in this race, the virus keeps changing its character. And how does it change its character? Basically, because if you allow the virus to remain for a long time, it can go from person to person. When it goes, it mutates. The other thing it can happen is if you give, let's say, convalescent plasma and suppress it, you know very well that if you try suppressing anything, it will only bounce back. So that's what happens. And of course, if there is incomplete vaccination, people just take one dose, don't take after that, or if you give inappropriate antibodies. So these are some of the things that allow this virus to mutate or to win the race against us. So you have to be careful about it. Now, there is also some worry about what is called as Delta Plus. Delta Plus is just another mutation which is there in the Delta variant. Please also recollect that this is not a more severe virus. It's not a more severe mutation. It only means that it is more transmissible. Means if there are more susceptible people, the number of virus doses that needs to transmit the disease is smaller. So therefore, it can spread faster, but it not necessarily cause more severe disease. A little bit of numbers now. We know that Karnataka is in the 3rd place now. We know that very well. But also Karnataka has got a very good record in the recovered cases. And the number of deaths also, we are pretty well. We are well within the normal range of under around 1 to 1.5%, which is quite good. And we know that also this virus, I'm just going through the waves. This is the first wave which happened last year. Then you can see here the first wave going down, second wave coming up. And we know by June, July, we have started seeing a reduction in this wave. So again, this is the latest this thing. And you know that we are now probably at the ebb of this wave. Therefore, we do not have much of cases now. Positivity rate is very low. Active rate is very low. And the case fatality is also pretty low right now. You know that when you get rooms available in all the hospitals and oxygen freely available, you know that this is not too much. So those are the ways you can make out. What I would like to look at you in the last 24 hours in this slide is to see that children again are very rarely affected. You can see that the number of children affected are pretty small here. And they are usually also positive with parents. So it's a family disease. Parents, uncles, aunties, grandfathers, somebody infected, child also gets infected. Maid servant also, another possibility. And again, the death cases in children, very low. So therefore, it's a mild disease. Now, there's another scare that children in the 3rd wave will be affected disproportionately. Is this true? Well, if you look at some of the Western data and some of the hypotheses, the first wave, they said all the elderly, comorbidities, those who had diabetes, hypertension, cancer, they were affected. In the 2nd wave, we saw young adults being affected. So now we know that the large number of these groups are relatively well protected. They are immune. So they feel that adolescents and children who have not been vaccinated would be probably the next group which are going to be affected. There is some data to this. If you look at the CDC again, you can see that the cases in a well-vaccinated country like US, the numbers are, the curve is shifting towards lower populations. And you can see here that the lower population, again here, you can see 0 to 4 and 5 to 10 going up here. So it is all the numbers are going up, but the children are also going up. So therefore, it will affect children definitely, but not disproportionate. Now, coming to some of the clinical features of this disease, like any other virus, now there are plenty of viruses going around. It's not only corona. You have the influenza virus, the rhino virus, and many other viruses running around right now. Many of our children have colds, coughs, etc. You can't make out whether it is COVID or non-COVID. Nobody can say that this viral infection in the child is not because of COVID. So the important thing is test, because testing will help you in handling this disease very easily. Now coming to the type of disease that children have, they have usually asymptomatic disease. 80 to 85% of them will have very mild disease. 10 to 20% will have moderate or easily manageable disease in any healthcare center. Severe disease is seen only in 1 to 3% of children. Therefore, even though the disease may be very common, I'm not going to go into this complicated slide, just to say that the risk in small children is pretty low. Now, what are the symptoms in small babies? One, or rather the mild symptoms. You have basically fever, cold, cough like any other virus. Some vomiting, loose motions can be there like any other virus. Headache, body pain, confusion, anything like this. And usually they have their antigen tests which are positive. And they are the best thing to do is to take care of them at home. Children with mild disease don't need any treatment. The only treatment they need is a little bit of paracetamol and some symptomatic treatment. We'll come to how to isolate them a little later on. Those with moderate disease have had mild disease for a few days and then they are worsening. They start coughing a little more. They can have a little drop in their saturation. And if the initial test was negative, please repeat, it may come positive. And sometimes they can go into, let's say, some deranged vitals, like a little heart rate which may be more, or maybe breathing a little fast, or fever a little more. And some of these things can happen and it can progress to severe disease. What is severe disease? Severe disease when the child has got difficulty breathing. That's the most important thing. Or grunting. Or if you measure a saturation which is low. Don't wait till the child becomes blue. That's too late. Another important thing is to look at the heart rate. It's disproportionately fast. And a fever which is not very easily treatable with the routine medication like paracetamol. Then there are complications in COVID which are unique or peculiar, which we just need to know a little bit about, called MIS-C. MIS-C is a condition which occurs after the child has had COVID and usually starts around 4 to 6 weeks afterwards. These children come with fever. They can come with a little bit of redness in the eyes. They look ill. They may have stomach pain and vomiting. Sometimes they may have convulsions also and don't pass adequate urine. And here it is not only the antigen test but the antibody tests also which are positive. Now, what can each family do to protect their children? This, I think, is the main thing which we are going to discuss. Up till now, we have just discussed a few of the virus characteristics. Now, let us look at 12 strategies which every parent and every family can implement to take care of the children. What is the first thing? Again, we need to know that children of different ages behave differently. A small baby is going to be very different from a slightly bigger child, school-going child, different from an adolescent. So, we also need to know what are the phases of this disease. We know that the child gets exposed. There is a multiplication of viral load which reaches a peak. The child is infectious in this period of time, shows symptoms somewhere here, and then recovers. So this is the whole map of how this virus goes. And you also need to know that this entire process lasts for around 2 weeks. So you start with getting, this child starts getting infected first. At exposure first, there's an incubation period and then the infection starts increasing. So we will look at what we can do in terms of the pre-COVID times, the COVID times, and post-COVID I'm not going to touch because that is a matter for another discussion. So now the first thing we need to do, or the rule number 1, is non-pharmacological interventions are the most important thing for children too, as much as for adults. All children older than 2 years must be masked. Hand washing must be taught to them. They should not be taken to crowded places. And as I said before, make them use the stairs. We have seen a tremendous increase in childhood obesity. These children should definitely start using stairs. This is a beautiful picture from the BBMP. Gives the same thing. Every child should go through this kind of thing. The next very important thing as far as masks is concerned, the way to use the mask. You see most of the people start using masks with the nose completely exposed. And there's no point in using that kind of a mask. So the important thing is it must fit snugly. Preferably N95, but a double-layered cotton homemade mask is also good for community use. Please use it. It must fit snugly. And even in any crowded places or if there is a suspicion of infection, this must be used. The correct way of putting this mask also is very important. Hands have to be washed. It must have 2 layers. Don't touch the fabric on the outside. Use the earlobe, cover your face properly, including your nose, and pull it tight so that it holds on firmly. So these are small things, but these need to be taught to children too, because otherwise there is no point in doing this. The next thing which you would do here is to, when you are using the handmade mask, which most of our people are using, always wash it and dry it. And don't keep reusing it again and again, because I see many times families using the same mask for days together. It is of no use. So keep washing it, drying it, and then use it preferably every day. This is in Canada again, very good this thing. So basically 2-3 things. Don't touch the face and the mask in public. Maintain respiratory etiquette. Hand hygiene is important. Double-layered mask is important. Cover the nose. Never take off the mask, especially many times children when they are using spectacles, they remove the mask and the specs together. And don't keep eating in public places. The moment you start eating, you will open your mask out. And disinfect items, keys, mobiles. Don't gather in large numbers. And if you have any symptoms, go quickly to the nearest center. Next very important thing, all families must learn how to measure temperature, take the pulse, look at the breathing rate, and in older children, the use of the pulse oximeter. This is very important because most parents don't check temperature properly, and pulse rate is very difficult, I'm sure, but if you with a little training, every parent can do it. Breathing rate also is very easy to count. If you start looking at your child for 2 to 3 minutes without his upper clothes on, you can make out how your child normally breathes. Just these 4 things are very important to know. Then charting it. It's very important to chart it properly. Just a simple, you can take your notebook, pencil, ruler, and just put these 4 parameters and chart it. This charting helps out very, very much. Next is older children, sleep on the stomach. You can train them to do it. And set up a consultation with your pediatrician before the child gets COVID, just to understand where you can contact and what you can do. And of course, complete all routine vaccinations. Yeah, so this is another thing. The pulse oximeter is a very important thing. It's very important to warm the hand when it is cold. I'm sorry, so warm the hand if it is cold. Make sure you're not wearing any nail paint, because nail paint and false nails will cause problems. Rest your hand on the chest at the heart level. Hold it still. Switch off the pulse oximeter. Place it on the middle and index finger. Keep the oximeter on for a minute or two longer for a stable reading. Record and check it about 2 to 3 times. And if you think that it is less, please call somebody. Next important thing is to vaccinate all the eligible adults against COVID. Please understand, whomsoever the child is going to come in contact with must be vaccinated. Now, there's always this confusion. Which vaccine should I take, doctor? Should I take Covishield or should I take Covaxin? Or should I take the new Sputnik vaccine? Well, please understand that whichever vaccine is licensed for use, please give it. Don't try to worry about which vaccine, which is going to be safer. Can I mix and match? All these things are not questions that should be asked. Please follow the government guidelines. They've been gone through in great detail by an expert committee, and please take the vaccine whichever is available. It really doesn't matter, because please understand that the goal of vaccination is not to prevent COVID. The goal of vaccination is to prevent you from getting into hospital with severe COVID. So therefore, please see that you give this. Luckily for us, Bangalore has achieved one of the highest vaccination levels of almost 168,000 on a single day. And like this, there are a lot of things. Another thing, any of your maidservants, anybody pregnant in the family, please see that the vaccination is given. Because pregnancy is one condition where this COVID is a bad disease. It causes prematurity, maternal mortality, and many other complications. There are many centers. I'm not going to go into this. You can look it up in the website. Then very important thing is, when should you check for antibodies? Please don't check for antibodies. Okay, there is no need. Once you have taken 2 doses, if at all you need to check for some reason, they are only going to be positive, and that too check the spike protein antibody. Don't keep checking some antibody. Okay, the spike protein antibody will be positive 2 weeks after the second dose of the vaccine. Don't try to keep checking in between. Some people I know, some of my patients, after the first dose, they say, let me just check if I've got antibodies. That's of no use. And in my opinion, do not test for antibodies unless it is medically indicated or the doctor wants it, for some reason. So vaccine, as I said, very, very good response from our part of it. Okay. Then there are also vans which are there now, which are going around and vaccinating people. Another very important initiative, after some recommendations by expert committees, have been vaccinating college students, because these are students who are likely to spread the disease pretty extensively. Then you can also have various apps which are there, which will give you the which will help you with the appointments, with the scheduling, with the vaccination records, etc. These are all things for people who have got children going abroad. Then you have got foreign-born students, where there is a relaxation in the interval between vaccines. Then, of course, lot of vaccine myths, and I think there is a lot of vaccine refusal. And I can tell you, as an example, my maidservant didn't want to take the vaccine because she had heard that it produces some kind of demyelinating disease and all kinds of things. So there are a lot of myths, and some of them are 5G mobile networks will transmit COVID-19, and they can come through radio waves, and it will produce all kinds of, all kinds of myths are there. So I think it's very, very important that everybody starts not only getting themselves, vaccinated, but also trying to get their servants, drivers, help, whoever, please not only get vaccinated, but get everybody else vaccinated too. Very, very important. And sometimes you will have people who say, oh, I already had COVID. Even if you have had COVID, after 3 months, you must take 1 dose of the vaccine, whichever vaccine. Please remember that just because you have had COVID doesn't mean that vaccination is unnecessary. So these are all very important things which people should know. Another point which I come across very often in practice is, doctor, he's got a cold and cough. Nobody in the family has got COVID. Should we test? So the point is, many mothers and parents are very, very reluctant to do the testing. And why? Because they think that one, it will be a big problem for children. You know, that kind of a picture, if you show them, they'll say, oh, my child will go through so much of pain for unnecessary things. Why do you want to do it? The second thing is that they'll say is that if supposing it is detected COVID, then these BBMP fellows will come and harass me, put me into isolation, not allow us to do anything. So these are problems. But please remember that unless you test, we don't know what is the diagnosis. If you don't know the diagnosis, treatment will not be possible. So I think the important thing is, like Manipal Hospital has set up child-friendly collection centers. Please look at it. We are also looking at alternative ways to test children, like salivary testing. So there is a great thing. And of course, the iPad screen, mobile phone is a great distraction. You put that in front of the child and ask him to keep looking at it while doing the test. He will not even know that you have done the test. So I think the important thing is to please do the test. Okay, and as I said, there are two kinds of tests. One is antigen-based test and antibody-based test. Do the antigen test only. Do the RT-PCR, rapid antigen, gene expert, whatever test. But antigen-based tests are what you should do. Antibody tests are not required. They are only required in certain very unusual circumstances. Now, basically, now there are also self-testing kits available. So, as I said, this is a little complicated cartoon. I don't think I need to go too much into this, but just remember two types of tests. One is the antigen test and the antibody test. Always do the antigen test only. It's basically the nasopharyngeal swab for an RT-PCR, which everybody knows now. You can also do rapid antigen test. You can also do a gene expert test. So those tests are available, and they can do depending on how soon you want the reports. So these are this. Then there are home testing kits available now, which you can use about 2 years. Bit expensive, but you can do this also if you want to. Now, please understand that early COVID testing is very important. It saves lives for 2-3 reasons. One, if you test early, you can start treatment early, you can monitor early, and you can have a better outcome. In fact, if you look at the mortality which happened in the second wave, it's primarily because of the reluctance in testing, because of the reluctance in seeking medical help, and the reluctance in not going to the hospital, because they all had so much of fear of, what will happen to my family, because I will detected COVID. There will be a lot of, people talking ill about us and then shun us, and ostracism will take place. So many things are happening. It may not be in Bangalore, but if you look at many of the, rural areas, this is very, very common. Once the child has been tested positive, you'll get a call from BBMP. You will get what is called as a specimen referral form ID. This is very important. Note it down. You'll also get a BU number. I think all this is available on the website. I'm not going into it. Determine your zone. You can go to the website called karnatakaFightsCorona.org and get your this thing. Then you can get your result from the war room or Karnataka government war room. There are a lot of helpline numbers there, which I'm sure all of you all can get from the platform. So please keep this BU number and SRF number very, very carefully. Then another thing is about micro containment zones. There are many people living in apartment complexes. Now, if you find 3 COVID-19 positive cases in an area of 100-meter radius, then they will create what is called as a micro containment, so that they monitor these small outbreaks and prevent them from becoming larger outbreaks. So these are some of the things which the BBMP is doing very successfully. This I've already spoken to you. You can get involved in this. Okay. Now, as I said, most cases are mild or asymptomatic. Do not panic if the report says positive. Don't go running to the doctor immediately saying, doctor, COVID positive, what should I do? No, you can wait for a day. Nothing is going to happen. Because ultimately, all you need to do is to give paracetamol and wait. Please be calm, because if you are calm, the child also is calm. If you start jumping around, the child also get excited and get into problem. And as you can see here, these are all the problems that children have when they have heard of COVID. They get into clingy, they become irritable, they start, obsessive requests for updates. They have sleeping problems, poor appetite, discomfort, agitation. So don't make a big issue out of it. Then watch your baby carefully for the next few days, because this is the time when the disease can progress. Chart, as I said, very carefully. Keep in touch with your doctor and keep a watch on the breathing rate, saturation, and in older children, you can do the 6-minute walk test, which is very common in adults, but in children, small children, is not possible. So keep a watch on the urine output and the breathing. These are very important things to do. Isolate the child, because it's very important to keep the child away from the elderly. The child will escape, but the grandmother will get into serious trouble because she is elderly. She may not be vaccinated, or even if she's vaccinated, may not have the antibodies to fight the infection. So be careful. Anybody who's got an ill person in the house, be very careful. Any obesity, anybody with gross obesity is high risk patient. Even adolescents with obesity are the ones who get into trouble. So please be careful, keep them away. Then there are guidelines which the government has given for how to take care of children at home as far as isolation is concerned. Now you need to isolate for 15 to 17 days. This is the toughest part with the parent, because children will just not want to be isolated. So you need to distract them. So you can set up an activity log, get them to do some painting, singing, mindfulness, musical instrument, online Scrabble. You can set up a joint game with their friends, favorite teddy bear, ensure good sleep. So many things are there. So isolate, mask, etc. One very important thing which I want to say, number 10, is do not give unnecessary medicines. There is this habit of giving unnecessary medicines. Okay, so the only medicine you require is paracetamol. Give it in the correct dose. Give it the frequency that is required. You do not need mefenamic acid. You do not need ibuprofen. You do not need any of those complicated medications. Do not give them. There are no proven immune boosters. No vitamin D, no zinc, no minerals. None of them are immune boosters. There is no need for any of them. And please speak to your doctor before giving all these medicines, because we know that many of them can have side effects of their own. Ensure optimal hydration. This is one thing which is very important. Any child who's got fever, you need more water. You need more frequent food, because the important thing is the child is not going to eat a big meal at a time, because remember, the ACE2 receptor in the stomach also. So they can have vomiting, stomach pain, diarrhea, etc. So small frequent feeds, very, very important. Avoid constipation. Give them fruits, vegetables, juice, etc. So those are very, very important to keep the hydration and this thing on. Talk to children. This is very important about the illness along with the doctor. The reason is talking is great medicine, because children will get positive reinforcement. They will listen to what you're saying. They feel good about it. And, this is, I think, a very, very important thing even for, young adults. The more you talk to them, they get, their problems are allayed. They don't, get so stressed out. Of course, once things open up and you have to get to the gym, there you are. You need to maintain the distance, maintain your masks, etc. Then you have a lot of organizations. You have pediatrician, the pediatric department at Manipal Hospital, in all the hospitals, Government of Karnataka, Step 1, Indian Academy of Pediatrics, Indian Academy of Pediatrics, Karnataka, a lot of NGOs, and Karnataka Fights COVID. So you have a lot of charts like this available, information for parents on how to take care of their children. There are, as I mentioned even before, see that children are vaccinated for their routine diseases. Let them not see there is a huge spurt of diphtheria in certain areas, because in this lockdown, nobody went and took their routine vaccinations. So I think the important thing is, please see that children are vaccinated for other things. Don't worry about this. And this is a simple, very good chart which shows that those who are vaccinated, you can mitigate the third wave. You can see here the third wave without vaccination and with vaccination. So follow the protocol, very simple, T3, test, track, treat with vaccination. We are coming into many of the festivals now. Okay, you might be on vacation, but COVID is not on any vacation. So please follow the COVID-19 protocols. There are, restaurants are open now. Very, very important. Thermal screening, hand sanitizing, online, distancing, etc. A lot of things important here. There are guidelines for the Ganesh Chaturthi festival coming up now. There are also for the Muharram festival coming up. So I think the important thing here is that schools may open for certain periods of time. We don't know as yet. Government has not taken a policy on this. So to do this, simple measures which we have looked at. Okay. Another important thing is, please remember that 1 in 3 people who get COVID are asymptomatic. It is still very, very important to keep the distance. Avoid crowd, cover cough and sneeze, keep hands clean, wear a mask. So Bangalore has witnessed a steady decline. Let's continue to be cautious against the spread of this virus. It is still around us. Always follow COVID appropriate behavior. This is a report we have submitted to the government on what we should do as far as preparedness for the pandemic. And let me give you one bit of information that the government of Karnataka, the BBMP, Indian Academy of Pediatrics, all of us are working in tandem to see that there is no great issue. These are the 17 topics which we have looked at, which, as you can see, are very, very important things on how we should prepare with vaccination, oxygenation, testing, awareness, reopening, psychosocial, training, public health, surveillance, nutrition, registry. So many things are here. So all these things have been given as recommendations. And of course, more detailed reports on each of these have been also given. So at the end of it, all of us are on the same page, whether it's the public or whether it is the professional or whether it's the government or the BBMP or whoever. At the end of the day, we have to keep our children safe. We have to see that none of them land up in problems. And if they do, we should be able to take care of it. So thank you very much. I will stop here and I will be open for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jagdish. It has been a very informative, and I think you went through the details and in length, and especially for the safety of our next generation, the children. And it's been really a wonderful session in terms of the details that you gave, test, track, and treat, and also all the COVID appropriate behavior. Now I'll open the sessions to questions. I see a hand, Mr. Sunil Shankar. Can we unmute Mr. Sunil Shankar, please, for Dr. Sunil Shankar?
Sunil, can you please?
Yes, I have unmuted. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, Sunil. Please go ahead with the question to the.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for your time, and kudos to the organizers for organizing a show like this. Sir, I have been privy to the COVID bulletins that have come in the last week or so. There have been one or two cases of mortality in children. That is not in Bangalore, but outside Bangalore. You being the head of pediatrician department in Manipal, have you seen an increase in the cases in children, sir, in the last week, fortnight or so?
Not really. Actually, what we have been doing is we've been tracking this, and most of the cases we are seeing right now are all mild cases. So we have had a few cases increase last month of MISC, but that has also come down. You see, what happens is when there was the second wave in May and June. So in July we got the antibody related problems. That is, we had the MISC problems coming up. We are seeing COVID now, but they are not of any great problems. They are all mild disorders. Regarding the death that you mentioned, see, it's not as if that you're not going to get mortality in children. The mortality will be rare. One. Point number two, it is going to be in people who come late and do not test and who keep waiting. Point number three is it is going to be in children who have got comorbidities. Please understand that even in pediatrics, we have a large number of children with congenital heart disease, lung disease, metabolic disorders, cancers. So there's a huge bunch of susceptible children with COVID. And many times these children don't die of COVID, they die with COVID. Because what it does is they have this comorbid condition, and COVID is another infection which can worsen it. The same thing would have happened if you had H1N1. So I think what we need to do is we have not seen a sudden jump in either the ICU admissions or the ward admissions. Yes, we have had the online consultations increasing, but that doesn't really matter.
Sir, I just have to add another small question, if I may be permitted, please.
Please.
Sir, keeping the susceptible children in the third wave and the committees that have advised the government, don't you think it's prudent for the government to wait a few more weeks or months for the school to reopen? Probably Zydus Cadila is around the corner. A lot of news around that vaccine is around the corner. So if someone can bell the cat at the government to enforce probably another month or so where the vaccine is around the corner, and probably Zydus being a 3-dose vaccine, even 2 doses probably might help the cause than rushing and facing another predicament. So it's a catch-22 situation for the parents, because if a parent has been through COVID if another child has to go through period, or if we have seen a mortality in the family, which I have seen myself, my sister succumbing to COVID, and my rest of the family, my niece, nephew, and brother-in-law to be affected, it's a strenuous thing on the family, So just thought that if someone can to play truant with the parents. So
at the outset, Sunil, I'm very sorry about your sister for your personal tragedy. I will answer two questions here. One is your question about school reopening, and second is your question about the Zydus vaccine.
Sir.
So let me start with the first one as far as the school reopening is concerned. See, there is a big debate going on as to when to open schools and how to open schools. And the first step is should we open schools at all? The second is which kind of schools should we open? Should we open schools which are government schools, government funded schools, or private schools? The point is, then do we start with the higher classes or do we start with the lower classes? Then what are the protocols? And what are the next question which is going to come up is, are we going to give them the full school protocol or are we going to give them partial protocol? So I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and it's not easy. And let me assure you that we have had a discussion on this just yesterday with the ministry on the prospects of school reopening. We are not yet convinced about when and how. That is the first part. The part number two is that regarding the vaccine. And see, Zydus Cadila vaccine is a very novel vaccine in terms that it's a DNA vaccine. So, and it's a 3-dose vaccine. So now the point is, we do not know whether 1 dose is sufficient, 2 doses are sufficient, 3 doses are sufficient. What will be the duration of protection? What will be the, we have absolutely no data in the public domain to answer these questions. The point is, we have to get first efficacy, second safety of this vaccine absolutely unequivocal before we can use it. The third thing is deployment and availability of this vaccine. Because remember that we have to deploy this over 1.5 crore children across Karnataka. Giving them 3 doses means it is 4.5 crore health worker interaction. But let us say, so it's not a small thing, it's a huge challenge. So I think the point right now is that regarding these two aspects, debate is still on. Yesterday, we have suggested that they should bring all the stakeholders onto the platform. That is, you bring the education department, health department, doctors, NGOs, parent groups, everybody onto one platform, and probably look at a kind of solution in the next 6 months time frame. That's what is probably will happen, I feel.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. I think there was Mrs. Roshni raising her hand. Can we unmute her, please? Can we unmute Mrs. Roshni?
Yeah, Ms. Roshni, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have done that.
Please go ahead, ma'am. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. First of all, thank you, Dr. Chinnappa. That was very, very informative. More knowledge added. And thank you, Vinod, for this. I am a grandmother and my grandchildren are 3 and 6 years old. Just under 3 and just under 6. So my question to you is, and they live on a golf course. So it's a very open green space, etc. B, they are extremely active and they all the time want to play outdoors, like cycling and slide and whatever. So while the older one does wear a mask now because he's been taught to do that, the younger one still kind of pulls it off and doesn't want to wear it. How susceptible in such an environment are the children likely to get attacked by this virus, and how soon should I look into vaccinating them?
Excellent questions, ma'am. Very, very challenging questions. The first thing is, your grandchildren are very lucky. They are in a very, very nice environment where the chances of getting COVID are extremely, extremely low. And if your elder grandson is wearing his mask, then even comes down even further. And please also, as I mentioned before, the younger grandson has a very little chance of getting into any symptomatic severe COVID. So don't worry about it. The important thing are usually in golf courses, it is the attendants who are a problem. So probably what you need to do is to see that all the people who care for your grandchildren are also masked with proper hand washing. I think if you do that, then you're fine. And as far as the vaccine is concerned, I doubt if your kids are going to get the vaccine in the next year. It may take at least a year before we start giving vaccines to at that age group. Because I think the government will first prioritize 12 to 18 years.
Okay.
And after they see that the vaccine is safe and it is immunogenic, then probably move downwards, which is what is happening in the rest of the world.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, ma'am. I think we have Pragya Prasoon who has a question.
Yeah,
and she was asking here. Can we unmute Pragya? Yeah. Hi, Pragya.
Hi, good evening, sir. Thank you for this wonderful session. I wanted to understand that if vaccinated people can infect children in terms of COVID, and and how safe are first dose vaccinated people for children?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. They are very good, very valid questions. Two or three things. One is a person who is vaccinated with one dose is not protected to a great extent. He is only protected to the tune of around 30%. Okay. The person who's given the vaccine, both doses of the vaccine, is also protected, but to the tune of around 70%. Okay. The other question which you asked is, can a vaccinated person transmit disease? Yes, he can, because as I said, vaccination does not prevent a person from getting infected. It only prevents him from probably getting into severe COVID. So if he gets infected, he is likely to pass on the infection to children. So the point is, even if you are vaccinated fully with 2 doses and have completed 2 weeks after the vaccination, even then it is important to wear the mask, maintain distance, and wash hands. Even then, it's not as if that if you either had the disease or vaccinated, you're immune. No, you're not. You can still get the disease.
I have one more query. From past 1.5 years, dental checkups and eye checkups for children have almost stopped because parents are literally very scared going for these usual checkups. They only prefer to go to hospital only for emergency vaccines or for if the children are sick. So, what do you suggest on that?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I think you see the people who have suffered the most in this pandemic are pediatricians. Okay, because we have seen a drop in all our patients coming in, because no parent wants to come to any medical facility for fear that their child will catch the disease. So it is not only restricted to the dental and the ophthalmic checkups, but for all checkups, vaccinations, and all services related to children. I have had children who needed physiotherapy, occupational therapy, who have not done it for the last 2 years because of lockdown. The other challenge is also travel. Many parents don't want to travel distances to go to see their pediatrician or to see anybody. So there are challenges, and I think what we need to do is to take appropriate behavior and get the checks done in a place which has got adequate protection against all these problems, against transmissibility. And if you look at initially last year in September, October, there were hardly 2 or 3 patients who used to come. But over time, what has happened is that they have understood that the transmission in a medical facility is not likely to be very high. Okay, primarily because the care taken to do all the protection is there in a medical facility. So you're more likely to get it if you go to a mall than you go to a hospital. So I think the point is that kind of confidence is what the public needs to have in a medical facility.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Pragya. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor. Can we unmute Aisha Sahani, please? Is Aisha Sahani?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead, Aisha.
So I have a 2-year-old and I also am 4.5 months pregnant. I've just got my second dose today. Now, my child that is going to be born, will he or she have some sort of antibodies against COVID?
Very good question, madam. Yes, the child will have. However, the duration of protection is not known. Okay. Because if you look at the current data which is coming out from many countries, the duration of protection seems to be around 8 months to 9 months. So your child, if you're 4 months old, then your child will be probably protected for about 4 months or 5 months after you deliver.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
I think Mr. Madan wants to ask a question, Vinod.
Yes, yes, doctor. Yeah. Can we unmute Madan, please? Mr. Madan?
Yes, sir. You can ask, sir.
Can I hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Dr. Chinnappa. It has been very useful and very informative discussion from you. I have a very small point. Now, the children have been away from the physical exercises or movement for a very long time now. They have not been able to go to the fields or play or go to the schools and things like that. So I was just wondering, is it better to start some kind of an exercise or a yoga program online for the children so the parents can guide them and so that they can build their immunity and remain healthy and have better resistance towards this pandemic?
Mr. Madan, you have hit the nail on the head, and I think you have very properly put this ahead. See, children are faced with 3 basic problems during this pandemic. Yeah. The main, first and foremost, of course, is too much of screen time. Because they're spending too much of time in front of the screen, whatever school or otherwise. The second thing as a byproduct of that is they are getting obese because there's constant eating and there's reduced physical activity. That's the second thing. True. And the third point is that they are getting into psychosocial problems because of these 2 things and other issues also, they have nobody to communicate to. So there is a high amount of psychosocial issues in terms of depression, anxiety, and so those issues are there. So I can only say that from the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, we have created a module for parents, and we are willing to share it with anybody who wants it in terms of psychosocial support. This is done in association with the NIMHANS group. So, the psychosocial part of it we take care of. The physical part of it, we definitely counsel all parents against the hazard of too much of eating and no physical activity. As you mentioned, yoga is a great idea. Dancing is another very good idea. So, and I think there are a lot of activities which children can definitely be involved in. But let me tell you, sir, the whole motivation for this has to come from the parent.
Obviously.
Because see, this pandemic has affected families. It's not affected only children. Yeah. And unfortunately, parents have also got into bad habits. Yeah. if you look at parents, they also are sitting and watching TV all the time, or sitting and doing nothing all the time and eating all the time. So the only people who have benefited from this are the online food deliverers. All your Zomatos and all that. As you can see, the IPO of Zomato was a massive success only for this reason, I suppose.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Madan. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is a question in the chat box. I'll just read it for you, Doctor. Namrata is asking, is the 3rd dose of vaccine is also being given? And what are your thoughts on this? And it's like the booster dose. Is a booster dose required after the 2nd dose?
Yeah, again, a wonderful question, which the whole world is grappling. Nobody knows. Okay, there are 2 countries which have said that you give the booster dose. One is Israel, the other is Germany. The US is sitting on the fence.
Yes, sir.
And in India, we don't have vaccines to complete the first 2 doses. So when we have surplus vaccines, we should look at the booster dose.
Yes.
But my gut feeling is, yes, we will need a booster somewhere down the line. But what booster? See, the problem is those who have taken Covishield, giving them the Covishield again as a booster may not be the right thing to do. Because we know that the adeno-vector vaccine, as the number of doses increases, reduces in potency. So we have to see what will be the best strategy to give a booster dose. So we have no idea about that right now. And what I would request, madam, is to have patience and to wait for some data to come from our country. Because in the US, we know with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, their antibody titers are dropping after 6-8 months. So they probably will need a booster, especially for those who are immunosuppressed or those who are above the age of 60 or 65. So I think the point is, we are still not clear about this question, but excellent question.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. Thank you very much. I think we have a few more questions, doctor. Can we go ahead, please?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Rajesh B, can we unmute Rajesh B? Rajesh, you can unmute yourself. Can we look at Hari? Mr. Hari?
Rajesh,
Rajesh is unmuted. Okay.
Hi.
Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rajesh here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa, thank you for coming. You actually took care of both my sons when they were 1 to 3 years at your clinic, and now they are 10 to 12. Thank you for your time. I have the question is that physical activities, non-touch sport, outdoor activities. What is your recommendation for non-touch sports?
Yeah, I think again a great question about non-touch sports. See, it's very difficult to implement. Theoretically very good, but extremely difficult. You try putting 2 children and say don't touch each other. Almost impossible. So I don't think that this is going to be very easy to implement. Yes, we can do non-touch sports. Yes, it's very good to play squash, maybe tennis, maybe something like that where there is very little contact. But I think the facilities for such things are very little. So I probably think that we should just, for the next at least 6 months till we decide about schools, just make it clear that children should be active for at least an hour or 2 every day. Physical activity should be compulsory for them. We'll worry about the outdoor and the non-touch and all that. Yes, we can do it, no doubt. But there are a lot of SOPs that need to be put in and a lot of also things which are not clear right now.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Can you Hari Kothamasan?
Mr. Hari, can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, doctor, for sharing very much valuable information. Okay, so my question is, if we have any contact with a person, who tested positive, right? So how many days we have to monitor for the symptoms to come so that, we can go for testing?
It's like this. There are 2 ways of looking at it. One is you can get tested in about 3 to 4 days time. Isolate yourself, get yourself tested in 3 to 4 days time. If you have been in close contact with somebody who's been tested positive, you can get symptoms anytime within a week's time. So you have to be careful during that particular week.
Okay, so if it is 11 days, so can we assume it's a safe?
11 days is beyond the time when you should have manifested with the symptoms.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Hari. Thank you, doctor. Can we unmute Deepa Rajesh, please? Ms. Deepa Rajesh?
Ms. Deep.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Sir, I have a question. Like a few doctors are suggesting this flu vaccination for children. Is it we have to give them this vaccination?
Well, you've asked a very, very pertinent question. See, remember that flu vaccine will protect against flu.
Okay.
Flu vaccine is unlikely to protect against COVID. We do not have data. There is some data which suggests that flu vaccine protects against severe COVID, but this is not a trial. This is based on large population data and therefore always suspect to kind of bias in them. So my suggestion is, if you routinely give flu vaccine to your children every year, go ahead and give it. Don't feel guilty if you have not given it. That's all I would say.
Okay, okay. We are not giving it, sir, so you don't recommend it to give them.
I don't recommend. I say that if you are giving flu vaccine routinely, give it. If you have not started giving flu vaccine and you don't want to give it, perfectly all right. Don't worry about it.
Okay, okay. Fine. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you. I think again there's a question in chat, doctor, where Preetham Shetty is asking, if mother is infected with coronavirus, then does breastfeeding affect the baby, and how to protect the baby from the virus?
And I didn't get the question, please.
The question is like, if the mother is infected and breastfeeding the baby, how to protect the baby from the virus?
Yeah, I think this is again a wonderful question. All the societies have made it clear that breastfeeding should continue, because the benefits of breastfeeding far outweigh any risks of the child getting COVID. The important thing is to have limited contact, face mask with an N95 mask, not a cloth mask in this situation. N95 mask, distance away, and feed only during or take the baby to the mother only during feeding times. Let the baby be separate at other times. The risks are very small and therefore can be given.
Thank you, doctor. I think we have come to the end. Any more questions? You can raise your hands and we'll have the doctor respond to you. Few more minutes. I think we are already above the scheduled time. One question on the chat box, doctor, is Mr. Narayan is asking, can we also have some tips on the good food habits to develop resistance and immunity?
Yeah, I think the key thing is to avoid obesity.
Okay.
Because the main thing that produces a reduction in immunity is obesity. So if you can reduce obesity, that is the key thing. The next thing is, please see that the children get plenty of vegetables, fruits, natural and clean water, and exercise, and don't allow them to eat too much of processed foods, etc. Well, there are many people who give kadas and turmerics and things like that. There's no harm. If they want to give it, fine with it. There's no problem with it. So I don't think that they do anything great with immunity, but that's fine. The other thing, very important thing is, nowadays since children don't go outside, they are likely to be deficient in vitamin D. So maybe a supplementation of about 400 to 600 international units of vitamin D every day is a good idea.
Okay. Yes, doctor, sure. Because, everything is actually become indoor and, they don't get enough sunlight. True, doctor. I think Sunil again has a question. Can we unmute Sunil?
I think Sunil is wanting to take my Viva today. Huh?
Yeah. Hi, Sunil.
Got your question. I really appreciate your sense of humor. Absolutely right on that. So, with respect to supplements, I just came up that there are many things like Giloy and Chyawanprash. Would it also help in kind of preparing the child with respect to boosting the immunity and stuff like that? Would you advocate that?
I think we should be careful with these herbs and things in children, because we do not know their side effects. So I think giving them for a few days is different from giving them for prolonged periods. And the moment you give this kind of things, and there are so many brands, so many people putting so many things in them. So I would suggest just keep away from all that. It's not required. Just try to stick to simple, fresh vegetable, fruit, some vitamin D supplements, regular deworming, prevention of obesity, regular exercise, and keep the cheer of the child. That's more important for their immunity than anything else.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, doctor. I think there was a question from Sheetal, if she's around, Sheetal Rao. She was looking at below 3 years. How do you, have the children wear a mask below 3 years?
Yeah, I think the important thing there is to show that everybody else is wearing a mask. And I've seen children who are 2 years old who are insisting on the mask because there is a nice Superman or something else on that mask.
Okay.
So they identify with it and love it. So they just say, okay, let's put it on and leave it on. And there are some who are so possessive, they won't take it off.
Yeah, very true.
They come to the clinic and just don't want to take off the mask.
Yeah.
So I think it's all a question of how parents communicate with their children. And if the child feels good about wearing the mask, or feels that he's become somebody great of wearing that mask, he's going to wear it.
Yes, doctor.
But if you tell him you must wear the mask, he'll say no, for sure. So because a child who's 2 and 3 is going to rebel against whatever you tell him. His first sentence will be no for anything. whether it is food or mask or whatever. So I think the important thing there is to go around your marketing properly. And for that, I'm sure grandmothers are better at it than mothers.
Yes, doctor. Very true, doctor. I think Mr. Raghu has a question. Can we unmute Mr. Raghu? Doctor, we can take another 2 questions.
Please go ahead.
Please, with your permission. Yeah. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Mr. Raghu?
All right. Audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, Mr. Raghu.
All right. See, we have been seeing how COVID is being seen for the past 1.5 years. Started off with elderly people, went to 45 plus. Now it is going towards younger generation. Is it that, I mean, these things have been predicted, have been told much in advance. Is it that we understand the virus so well that this is going to be the next phase of virus? How is it that we are able to say, and what next after this?
Sir,
okay.
Let me assure you again that your question is great. Nobody knows the answer. Let me tell you why. The reason is this is a very unique virus. This virus is not like any of the other viruses that we know. This virus is not like our influenza virus, not like RSV virus. It's not like any of the other viruses, respiratory viruses. It's a very unique virus because it acts very differently. It produces a lot of changes in the body which other viruses don't. So I think what we need to do is to not go too much about predictions. We have already fallen flat once on the second wave prediction. So I think let us not go by all that. Let us be prepared. We don't know whether third wave will come, whether children will be affected, whether elderly will be affected, who will be affected. The point is we know that we have to be prepared. So be prepared. Don't worry about what happens.
No. My concern is the following. You see, every day is a learning exercise for us, for everyone at different levels.
Correct.
Okay. So given this understanding or given this knowledge, are we competent to know its evolution, or how is it going to be tomorrow, which will help us?
As you said, see, nobody can predict 100%.
Agreed.
But what they can do is to follow the virus. And if you look at this, after all, there have been countries which have gone through third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave now. Today, there are some countries which have gone to fifth wave of the virus. So we know how this virus is behaving in certain populations. So we have to take our lessons from what is happening elsewhere and look at this virus from that point of view. Yes, I agree with you. We don't have clear idea of how this virus is going to play out in the Indian population. But by and large, this virus will behave the same, whether it is in Iran or whether it is in Saudi Arabia or whether it is in Afghanistan or whether it's going to be in India. So it's going to go along the same path. It's not going to be very different unless there is some very local, mutation. So my feeling is that though we don't know, we know a lot of it. And let me also congratulate many people, and amongst those the scientists, because I can tell you 2-3 things. They've got the genome of this virus within 30 days of the virus even being detected. So the genome was ready. People funded for a vaccine long before they knew that even a vaccine will work. Huge amounts of money was poured into a vaccination attempt before even they knew whether there will be a vaccine available. And classic example is Serum Institute, which put in billions of dollars into a product which they don't know whether it will work or not. So I think what is amazing about this pandemic is the speed at which medical innovation has taken root and which has moved towards controlling this virus. And I think we should be really grateful to the times we are living in and the scientists who have worked day in and day out to bring this out. For all those who are interested, there is a beautiful book called Premonition of the Pandemic.
So knowing genome, it will help us to identify a section of people in terms of age who are more vulnerable to that particular virus?
No, identifying the genome will track the virus. will tell you what is happening to the virus. See, for example, we started initially with the original strain from China. Then we had the next strain which came up from England. Then we had the next thing which came from South Africa. Then we had one which came up from Brazil. And then we had the Delta which came from India. And then we have one more which is now slowly coming up from Peru. So we are going to get different mutations of this virus popping up all the time. So it is, as I said, it's a race, and we have to keep this race going. See, we have to outrun this virus. We will, ultimately we will. But the point is how long it takes, what we are going to do, we are not sure about it.
No,
but
how did we say that the third wave is going to be, more, troublesome for younger children, younger generation?
Based on two criteria. Criteria number one is that the most susceptible population for the virus will be less than 18 because they are not vaccinated. Point number two is tracking the epidemiological outbreak in a large country like United States of America, where there are accurate data available which is showing that the disease is moving towards the younger population now. So I think we are looking at trends. Nobody can say sacrosanct that only children will be affected, but we have to be prepared for it. And I can tell you that that is the reason why all the pediatricians are looking at how to handle this. And almost 3,000 pediatricians from the state have had meetings on a joint platform to look at what each person can do at every district and taluk level to see that we do not get into trouble. Like the second wave, adults got into trouble. So let me tell you that a lot of preparation is on right now. So hopefully we should not land up with a mess like what we landed up with the second wave.
Thank you, doctor. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Raghu.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we have Rajesh. Rajesh again with a question. Can we unmute Rajesh? I think this will be the final question, doctor. Is it okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Please unmute Rajesh, please.
Rajesh, unmute.
Hi, Rajesh. Your audio is not clear.
Once again.
Yeah.
Doctor, the question that I would like to ask is pre-class to 2 hours. Now my 10 years and 12-year-old school time. The two questions because of that data point is, will there be an eye problem and will there be any psychometric problems that we see in the short term?
Your questions are not clear, Dr. Mr. Rajesh. Can you just repeat them, please? Your voice is breaking.
Rajesh, you can unmute.
He has to unmute himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rajesh.
I will. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? Better. Yeah.
Can you? So my question is that pre-COVID, my kids were exposed to screen time 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and now post-COVID, they're exposed to screen time for 6 to 8 hours for the last 18 to 24 months. The question is two. One is, will there be eye problems? Is there a remedial action that we can take in the intraday sessions? Number two, will there be psychometric problems because of screen time that they are exposed to the last 18 to 24 months at 8 hours per day run rate?
Okay. Excellent questions, both of them. And I would say yes to both. One, as far as eye is concerned, there will be eye strain. There is going to be a problem with, and you need to check it up very carefully. Point number two is such a long period of time during the screen will affect their sleep. And if it affects their sleep, there are likely to be psychosocial problems. So therefore, what we need to do, we have looked at this because schooling majority of the time is on the screen. So there are various recommendations to reduce the impact of the screen on children. The important thing is the position of the child, frequent breaks, and staggering the school timing. The other thing is try to avoid all non-essential screen times, even if it is on the mobile phone. So there are a lot of recommendations which are there. We have it on the Indian Academy of Pediatrics website. I'll be happy to share it with you if anybody wants it.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. I think we have come to the end of the session, and I think, doctor, there's no more questions from anybody. Anybody wants to ask a final question can raise their hands, or I'll take the ones on the chat box. No, I think, we have come to the close. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Jagdish Chinnappa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. And with your busy schedule, but still, you accepted our invite. And it's been a very, very informative and a very, very good session, and with a lot of points on the entire, especially our future generation and the youngsters and the children who are very important citizens for us. So we thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you all for joining this webinar. Bengaluru fights Corona and prevent the third wave. Third wave beda namgellargu. So I think in this note, on that happy note, I think that we'll all fight this battle together, and let's all be safe, stay healthy, stay fit. Thank you everybody.
Thank you, Vinod, and I thank all the questions. They were wonderful questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Vinod. Thank you, Dr. Chinnappa.
Thank you.